The nature of Pale Fire's unreliable narration, with its primary narrator Kimbo, creates a kind of critical rabbit hole that it's easy to fall down, and that's a kind of deeper version of the rabbit hole some of us fell down while discussing questions of what happens off stage in Top Dog Underdog in our first unit. It is true, Top Dog Underdog gives us some unreliable characters on stage and forces us to accept that not everything, for example, Booth says about Grace is or can be literally true, leading us to distrust those words. In the same way, we clearly distrust Kinboat, or if we don't distrust Kinboat, we're really getting a very different understanding of what's going on in Pale Fire. We are forced to take the literary text not at face value, to take it not as a straightforward account of events, but this sometimes leads critics, some of the critics we read in Top Tick Underdog, some who Repel Fire, some of us, to get overly invested in what really happens off stage. So you will see critics who will actually try to say that, in fact, Shade doesn't exist, Kinboat just made him up. Or that Kinboat doesn't exist, Shade just made him up. That Shade is doing some literary fraud. This is in fact, these are questions are in fact fruitless and moot because they attempt to create a stable, real thing outside the world of the novel that the novel points to. But the novel doesn't point to any actual facts. It can't do that because it's fiction. The answer the answer is that both Kinboat and Shade are fictional. That they are not real. And in some ways, this levels out the fact Kinboat seems really not real, but like, is he any more fictional? Is he any more fictional than Shade is? They are both creations of Nabokov. They are both invented people who have never lived, who only exist in our imagination as the language of the novel constructs them. I would actually urge you to take the Kinboat passages seriously. They are fantasies, or they are if you imagine them not as lies or fantasies, but as additional fictions within the fiction. In that space, their fictiveness is just part of the novel itself. And I'll say this, some of those fantasies are narratively enjoyable. Sometimes the joke's on Kinboat, sometimes he's telling an interesting story. There's a reason he's given the bulk of the novel, and the notes are different. I would go one further. Zembla is presumably an imaginary country, even in the world of the novel, but even that is not certain. I would point out to the superscript, the subscript at the bottom of the forward, the slug line, the date and place where Kinboat allegedly finished writing his forward. This happens in a place called Cedarn, name of a made-up town, Utana. Is that Utah? Is that Montana? If we're going to make up a fictional town, we could put it in an actual state. It is not necessary to create a fictional Mountain West state called Utana, but this novel does. One of my questions is Zembla in the final analysis any less real than Utana? I would argue that it might not be. That in fact, if we imagine everything in the novel as equally fictional, equally open to reading, and only everything is only provisionally real, I think we get further, and this keeps us analyzing the work itself rather than the imaginary non-existent world it depicts. Because when you discuss a work of art, you're doing literary criticism. When you're trying to work out what really happened in the story, you're just buying into, well, lies.